The palace was silent. Only the flicker of torchlight danced along the marble walls, and the sound of distant water echoed through the corridors. But in the deepest shadows of the Ottoman court, whispers told of something far darker than political plots or royal jealousy. They spoke of a curse. It wasn't the kind of curse one read about in fairy tales. It was older, heavier, and woven into the very stones of the palace. A curse so feared that even the Sultan himself dared not speak its name aloud. Servants crossed themselves in secret. Eunuchs avoided certain halls at night. And no one dared to question the one woman at the center of it all. She was the queen, beautiful, cunning, and dangerously untouchable. While others fought for power in the light of day, she held her throne in the shadows of night. Every evening, after the palace drifted into uneasy slumber, she would disappear into her private chambers. There, by candlelight, she performed a ritual no outsider had ever fully witnessed. Some swore it was a plea for protection. Others claimed it was an unholy pact with forces beyond mortal understanding. The ritual was said to keep death itself at bay, or summon it upon those who crossed her. And whether you believed in curses or not, one fact was undeniable. She had survived every scandal, every betrayal, and every challenge to her crown. But the night the ritual stopped, everything changed. Long before Hurrem Sultan walked the palace halls, the Ottoman Empire had already woven its history into legend. Among the most whispered of these tales was the story of Sultan Murad II, a ruler whose reign was marked by unmatched victories, until the night he died suddenly in his sleep. The official records claimed it was illness. The palace, however, told a different story. It began when a sacred artifact, a talisman carved from black stone and inlaid with gold, was stolen from a sultan's private chambers. This was no ordinary treasure. It was said to be bound to the sultan's life force itself. The object's origins were shrouded in mystery. Some claimed it had been a gift from a Sufi mystic. Others believed it had been taken from a pagan shrine centuries earlier. But one belief remained constant. As long as the sultan possessed the talisman, no blade, poison, or illness could end his reign. The night it vanished, the sultan's power seemed to vanish with it. By morning, he was dead, and the artifact was never seen again. From then on, palace folklore whispered of a curse, that any who held the talisman without honoring it through a sacred ritual would suffer a fate worse than death. Centuries later, rumors began to swirl once more. Servants claimed Hurrem Sultan had stumbled upon the talisman, hidden deep within the oldest wing of the palace, a wing so haunted that even guards refused to patrol it after sunset. She had not only found it, but had learned the ancient ritual required to keep its dark power dormant. The ritual was as meticulous as it was strange. The rosewater baths infused with rare herbs, the Persian incense that cloaked the air in a sweet, choking mist, the ancient prayers that blended Islamic tradition with the folk magic of her Slavic heritage. And finally, the most curious step of all, locking away an object of personal connection to the Sultan inside a golden chest, ensuring his loyalty was bound to her as tightly as the curse bound itself to the talisman. Whispers in the harem grew louder. Was her unshakable grip on the Sultan's heart truly the result of beauty and charm, or something much darker? No one dared ask her directly, for the legends warned that even looking at the talisman without permission could draw the curse's wrath. For years, Hurrem's power remained untouchable. Rivals vanished. Threats dissolved before they could reach her. And though the empire was a place of constant intrigue, she stood at the center like an immovable force. But the talisman had its own will, and the price of keeping it asleep would one day come due. The ritual and the ghostly warnings. Every night, as the palace sank into its heavy, breathless silence, Hurrem Sultan began her work. It was not the work of politics or seduction, but something older, stranger, something whispered of in dark corners and avoided in polite conversation. She would begin in her private chambers, doors bolted, curtains drawn against the moonlight. The first step was always the same, a bath of rosewater infused with rare herbs, some brought from distant mountains beyond Persia, others gathered by hand from the wild fields of Anatolia. The scent was intoxicating, sweet yet sharp, almost medicinal. It clung to her skin like a second aura, a perfume that seemed to repel more than just mortal touch. Then came the Persian incense, thick coils of smoke rising from a carved bronze burner, winding like living shadows into the rafters above. The air would grow so heavy with fragrance that it felt as though the very walls were breathing. On certain nights, the smoke took on shapes, swirling patterns that resembled faces, eyes, or hands reaching toward her. Some swore this was only a trick of the mind. Others knew better. The final step of the ritual was the prayer, soft at first, then rising into a chant. The words were a strange blend of Islamic devotion and Slavic folk magic, a hybrid that made even the most pious in the harem uneasy. Hurrem spoke them in a low, deliberate tone, her eyes half closed as if listening for something only she could hear. It was during these prayers that the stories began. The younger concubines, those new to the palace, would sometimes linger outside her chambers, curious. They claimed that in the moments when the incense was at its thickest, they could hear whispers, not the queen's voice, but another, several others, overlapping, speaking in a language no one could identify. The voices were faint, like wind through stone corridors, yet urgent, insistent. Some swore they heard warnings, others thought they heard commands. But there was one tale that silenced even the boldest of gossips. A handmaiden named Layla had been serving Hurrem for only a few months when her curiosity overcame her fear. One night, as the queen bathed, Layla was alone in the chamber. The golden chest sat on the low table, its intricate locks gleaming in the flicker of candlelight. Beside it, nestled among silk cloths, lay the talisman. It was smaller than she imagined, a piece of black stone no bigger than a palm, set in an ornate frame of gold. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, the air changed. The temperature dropped so sharply that her breath came out in white clouds. She thought she heard someone whisper her name, so close it felt like lips against her ear. 3 days later, Layla was gone. No body, no farewell, no trace. She had been seen that morning, pale and trembling, muttering to herself about the eyes in the smoke. By evening, she had vanished as if she had stepped into the shadows and simply never returned. After that, the queen's chambers became a place no servant lingered in after dark. Even the guards refused to stand too close to the door when the incense burned. And yet, the ritual continued, night after night, unbroken, unstoppable. Some believed it was the source of her unshakable hold over the sultan. Others feared it was a pact, one whose terms no mortal could truly understand. But all agreed on one thing. Whatever lived within that talisman was awake. The night it was broken, it happened quietly. No trumpet sounded, no proclamation announced it. But that night, for the first time in years, the queen's ritual did not take place. Some say she had fallen ill, a sudden fever that left her too weak to rise from bed. Others whispered of stranger causes, that the talisman itself had grown restless, rejecting her touch, or that she had received a dream so terrifying it made her afraid to perform the chant. Whatever the truth, the silence in her chambers was deafening. The incense burner remained cold, the golden chest untouched. And for those who knew the queen's habits, the absence was impossible to ignore. The next morning, the palace awoke to a scene out of an omen. In the courtyards, dozens of white doves lay still, their wings folded unnaturally tight against their bodies. The fountains ran sluggish, their crystal water clouded with a strange milky haze. In the well that served the inner court, the water had turned an opaque gray, thick with something no one dared name. By midday, the sultan began coughing. At first, it was a shallow sound, the kind of cough dismissed as nothing more than the dry air. But as the day wore on, it deepened, rasping, relentless, echoing through the corridors. Courtiers exchanged uneasy glances. Servants whispered prayers under their breath. And in the harem, the rumors began. "They say the talisman is hungry," one concubine murmured, her hands trembling as she poured tea. "No," another corrected in a whisper, "it's angry." By nightfall, the story had already transformed. Some claimed that the queen's protection had been broken, that the unseen force she had kept bound with her ritual had finally been freed. Others were certain it was the curse of a long-dead sultan, exacting revenge for some hidden betrayal. The queen herself said nothing. She remained in her private quarters, unseen, refusing food and turning away her attendants. Those who managed to glimpse her swore she looked diminished. Her skin, once luminous, had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality. Dark shadows pooled beneath her eyes. On the second day, the palace's atmosphere shifted from anxiety to dread. The Sultan's cough worsened, now accompanied by bouts of fever that left him unable to attend court. Decisions were delayed, petitions unanswered. The viziers bickered openly, sensing weakness at the heart of the empire. And through it all, the queen did not perform the ritual. Some believed she was simply too sick to continue. Others, those who knew the deeper stories, feared that trying again after breaking the chain would only provoke whatever spirit lingered in the talisman. By the third day, strange occurrences multiplied. A mirror in the queen's antechamber shattered without cause, splintering into shards that reflected not faces, but distorted, shifting shapes. A servant carrying a tray through the garden claimed she saw a woman dressed in Ottoman silks, only for the figure to vanish the moment she blinked. The doves were gone entirely. Even the sound of ordinary palace life, laughter, music, the hum of daily duties, had faded, replaced by an oppressive stillness. It was then that the whispers grew bold. The curse has awakened. No one dared speak of the possibility that the queen herself might be its target. But as the days stretched into weeks, and her influence over the Sultan visibly waned, a quiet truth began to settle over the court. Something had shifted, and it would not shift back. And in the deepest hours of the night, when the palace lay draped in darkness, some swore they could hear a sound coming from the direction of the queen's chambers. Not the chant she once performed, but a slow, deliberate knocking, as if something inside the golden chest was asking to be let out. The whispers became open accusations. At first, they came from the shadows, envoys and rival wives muttering behind silk screens. But soon, even the viziers dared to voice it aloud. Hurrem had bewitched the Sultan. They spoke of dark arts and forbidden charms, twisting her nightly ritual into evidence of sorcery. Her allies dwindled. Those who once sought her favor now avoided her gaze, fearful of being caught in the tide turning against her. The Sultan's decline was swift and merciless. Once a figure of strength, he grew frail, his voice no more than a whisper. He ceased appearing in court altogether, and when he did emerge, it was with Hurrem at his side, his hand trembling in hers. To some, this was a sign of loyalty. To others, proof of her enchantment. And then he was gone. The announcement came before dawn. The wails of the muezzins echoed over the palace walls. For Hurrem, the world seemed to fold in on itself. The man who had protected her, loved her, and, according to rumor, been bound to her by magic, was now beyond her reach. Within hours, the new order took shape. The same men who had once bowed to her now ordered her confinement. Her chambers were stripped of servants. She was no longer the queen, but a widow and a prisoner. It was on the second night of her isolation that she noticed it. The golden chest, always kept within reach of her bed, was gone. No one admitted to moving it. No one saw who entered her room. The talisman had vanished. Some say it was taken by her enemies, to be destroyed. Others believe it returned to its true master, slipping into the unseen world from which it came. Hurrem never spoke of it again, but the palace never forgot. Centuries have passed, yet the whispers remain. Visitors to Topkapi Palace often speak in hushed voices after leaving the wing where Hurrem once lived. They describe a prickling sensation along the back of their necks, as if unseen eyes were watching from the shadows. Guides smile politely when asked, but their voices lower, too, betraying that even they are not immune to the stories. Some claim that in the still air of the old harem corridor, a faint scent of rosewater drifts unexpectedly. It appears without warning, lasting only a heartbeat before vanishing like smoke. The palace staff insists no flowers are kept there. And then there are the more chilling accounts. Shapes glimpsed in the corner of an eye, the soft rustle of silk skirts when the hall is otherwise empty, and, most unsettling of all, a glimmer of gold, like the reflection of a gilded chest, seen in the dark. Whether it is the restless spirit of a queen guarding her talisman, or simply the imagination stirred by centuries of legend, no one can say for certain. But in Topkapi, they have a saying: some treasures are never truly lost. If you want to hear more stories the history books don't dare to tell, subscribe now. The next secret might be darker than you think.